Okay, so let's now look at something called simple factoring. Okay, let's backtrack. Factoring is used to go from standard form to factored form. We go into factored form to get the zeros of a parabola. Okay, there's many steps for factoring. We know that we got to do common factor first, then check the special cases, which we'll cover in a later video, and then check for simple trinomials. Okay. Before we go on to that, let's review how to expand, because it's going to help us for all these cases. If I have 2x minus 3 times x plus 4, I know that I need to multiply the first with the first. 2x times x gives me 2x squared. And then the last with the last, minus 3 times 4 gives me minus 12. And this step, the inside and the outside, done in one step, will help us go backwards. Because from now on, I'm going to go from here back to this. So it's minus 3 times x, which is minus 3x, and 2x times 4, which is 8x. And I remember that in my head, and it's 8x minus 3x gives us plus 5x. Okay? So let's look at how the signs work out with different combinations. And first of all, why do we call it a simple trinomial? Well, a trinomial is just something with three terms, ax squared plus bx plus c. A simple trinomial is one that starts with just x squared. In other words, that my a value is equal to 1, not negative 1, just positive 1. So anything that starts with x squared and has three terms will be a simple trinomial. So what if you have x plus 1 times x plus 3? What would that be? Well, x times x gives me x squared. 1 times 3 gives me 3, and now we'll do that the inside. 1x plus 3x is equal to 4x. Okay, let's look at this one. X minus 2 and x minus 5. X times x gives me x squared. Minus 2 times minus 5 gives me plus 10. And on the inside, minus 2 minus 5 gives me minus 7. X. And lastly, x plus 4 and x minus 9. X times x gives me x squared. 4 times minus 9 gives me minus 36. And 4x minus 9x gives me minus 5x. If the signs are reversed, well, we got x squared, we got minus 36 still, but now it's going to be minus 4x plus 9x, which is plus 5x. Okay, let's look at some stuff here. They all started with x squared, which means these are all simple trinomials in standard form. And we notice that all these brackets have, well, x and x. There's no 2x or half x. So whenever I have a simple trinomial, my answer, because that's going to be my answer now, it's going to be x and x. Great. Let's look at the signs. Well, if I've got both signs that are positive, I'm going to be adding the middle term. Well, multiply the last two to get this number, which is going to be positive, and then adding, which is also going to be positive. So when I have something like this to factor, x squared plus 4x plus 3, I know that I'm going to start with x plus x, and I know that both numbers are going to be adding. Make sense? So all numbers are positive, I get all positive. Now, what if I have something like this? So I can't see this, and I see that my last number is a plus, but my middle number is a negative. Well, that says that both numbers have to be negative. They both have to be negative and negative, because when I multiply two negative numbers, it gives me a positive number. And when I add two negative numbers, it gives me a negative number. Okay, so catch on to that. And for this one, what's common? Well, here I got plus and plus. Let me write that. If I got plus and plus, or if I got minus and minus, then the middle number is going to be negative. And here, if I got plus and minus in different order. And what do you notice? Well, the only difference is now my last term is negative, and my middle term could either be positive or negative. The only way I can get this last number to be negative if it's a plus and a minus. and then the middle term's no longer important to us. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's see if it makes more sense when we start factoring. So now we're going to get a trinomial in standard form, and we're going to try to see if we can put it into brackets, into factored form. So it's an x squared, so I know that this is going to be x and x. I see that that's a plus and that's a minus. So if I remember correctly, they must both be negative numbers. So when I multiply them, it's 14. When I add them, it's negative 9. So keeping that in mind, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 14 and add up to negative 9. What would those two numbers be? Well, 2 and 7 work if they're both negative. Minus 2 and minus 7 are going to be our answer. Let's check. X times x is x squared. Minus 2 and minus 7 gives me plus 14. And the inside, minus 2 minus 7 gives us minus 9. So we know we got it. This is correct. Let's look at the next one. X squared, so that's going to be x and x. And 20 and 9, and they're both positive. If they're all positive, it means that these two numbers will be positive too. So I need two numbers that are both positive that will multiply to 20, and add up to 9. Well, 4 and 5. Yeah, that's right. So I go 4 plus 5. Now if you put them 5 and 4, it's the same answer, right? And let's check. X times x is x squared. 4 times 5 gives me 20. And now it's 4x plus 5x gives us 9x. So we know we got that right too. And the last one on this board is, again, I started with x squared, so that's a simple trinomial. X and x. And now I've got two negatives. Now, it doesn't matter this one, but the last one's negative means one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And I need two numbers that multiply to 6 and add up to 5. I may be very tempted to pick 2 and 3, because 2 times 3 is 6 and 2 plus 3 is 5. But the signs won't work out. So I know that I need to be two different signs. So that would be negative 6 and positive 1. So negative 6 and plus 1. And let's see if this works. Well, x times x is equal to x squared, and minus 6 times 1 gives me minus 6, and minus 6 plus 1 gives me minus 5. And see, that worked out. So be careful. That thing about checking the signs will help us not make those little mistakes, like picking the 2 and the 3. What it looked like it could have worked out. Are you wondering if it would have worked out? Well, if I put a 2 and a 3, if they're both negative, so we get the minus 5. When I do minus 2 times minus 3, it gives me positive 6, and it's not the same thing that I started, so no, it's not right. Okay, last one. We know that simple trinomial means it starts with x squared, and I have something like this. 3x squared minus 15x plus 12. Doesn't look like a simple trinomial. However, as this dude is telling us, we always check for common factor. That's the first thing that we do. And I hadn't been checking for the other ones because they all started with x squared. But 3, 15, and 12, well, we can factor out the 3 out. And if I do common factor, divided by 3 is x squared minus 5x plus 4. Okay, so now I have this 3 which I cannot forget, which stays there. And I'm going to have two brackets. If this can be factored, because it cannot always be factored. It's x squared, so it's a simple trinomial, so I'm going to have x and x. And I need to find two numbers that multiply to 4 and add up to negative 5. Well, because it's positive in the end, it's got to be either both positives or both negatives. So it has to be both negatives. So two negative numbers that multiply to 4 and add up to negative 5, well, that's negative 4 and negative 1. Negative 4 and negative 1. And again, we could have done x minus 1 and x minus 4. And let's just check. And that x times x gives us x squared. Minus 4 times minus 1 gives us plus 4. And minus 4x minus 1x is minus 5. And that checks out.